What do you attribute it to after 8 years? And Trump has really now been on the national stage with the birther nonsense and everything else for a decade. What more does anybody need to see to understand that these people mean exactly what it is that they say they mean? What do you think the disconnect is?
So this is something I've thought a lot about because the influence that Donald Trump continues to have over the Republican Party is shocking to me. Now, I led the first impeachment investigation, and it was, I think, pretty clear from what we demonstrated and proved that he abused the power of his office to use his official authority for his personal gain. But what he did in withholding $400 million of military assistance at that time seems quaint compared to what he has done since. And when you see what he has done post 2020 election, trying to overturn the election, inciting a violent insurrection, and you still have so many members of his party and the leadership and control of the House Republicans who are still kissing his ring, it is shocking. So you ask yourself why. I think there are a lot of smart people who have a lot of reasons. My brief take on it is that Donald Trump expanded the base of the party to a number of voters who were disengaged, who were not voters, who were not part of this process. And they only got engaged in the political process because of him. And they are unbreakable in their support of him. That base has, I think, expanded a little bit as the rest of the Republican Party has shrunk. So it is now a disproportionate amount of the base of the Republican Party. And there is simply a cult following of Donald Trump from those people and others that they have infected. And so even if ultimately he only has, support from 25 or 30% of the Republican Party, and I think it's probably more than that at this point, he remains, that's about all you need to win a large, multi-candidate primary. And so he continues to have control because of the following that he has and the threats that he uses as a wannabe mob boss to threaten to primary anyone who goes against him, to threaten to support anyone who doesn't agree, to support anyone opposing someone who doesn't agree with him. And essentially, he is, in true, Republican fashion, holding the House Republicans hostage to his whims. And that's why there's such an outsized influence, because I have conversations with people in Congress behind the scenes quietly. They can't stand him. And they think he's terrible for the party, but they would never speak out because they are concerned about their own political future. And we have seen many times that when you stand up to Donald Trump, if you're in the Republican Party, he will come after you with a far-right extremist primary. And in many cases, he wins. Now, in the Senate, he didn't win last time. And in some of the, but in the House, he did pretty well. And so that is a threat that looms, and any rational person who's just focused on their reelection is just not going to entertain that kind of discourse with him.
How do you feel about the fact that you'll read blind quotes from White House political advisors basically saying, we want Trump. We want Trump through the Republican primary to be the nominee, which really means bringing Trump into the finals. He's one of the major party nominees on the ballot and in position to win an election against someone at the end of the day who will be 82 years old and has an approval level that ranges from high 30s to mid 40s. When I read that, it brings me to the edge of an aneurysm. I can't. It's so reckless that there's not a word for it. And at the same time, I was talking to a group of Democratic friends of mine, all work in politics. I'm the only former Republican in the room. I was trying to bring up the case is that there's only really two teams in the league, right? If there were 15 teams and Donald Trump and his MAGA coalition were crushing everybody, that says something. But if there's only two teams, and that's the team that you're losing to in this race, that race, it says something. Do you understand what the appeal is? What drives that Trump voter? Do you get the 40% of the country that doesn't have $400 cash available, that's looking to deliver a you to somebody? And that's what I think Trump is at the end of the day. He's the lowest conceivable bar that's ever been, because the only expectation that people have of the guy, of his supporters, is that he's going to say you to someone for them. But do you understand or have a theory on why so many people want that fuck you delivered? And I think that's exactly what it is. I'm not trying to be gratuitous with the language. There is a seething anger, certainly stoked by $1 billion rage and anger industry, but the anger is real, no matter how it's come to be, how justified it is. And so I wanted to ask you about that, and really hear what you think about as a political leader, is someone that I look at with tremendous promise as a political leader. What are we going to do about that?
Well, you raised two very important issues. And just to address the first part of what you said, because I think this is really important to discuss. I don't think there's any question that Joe Biden's best chance of winning the next election is against Donald Trump. And I think it would be horrible for the country for Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee. We need to stamp out this authoritarian, anti-democratic demagogue.
Amen.
Get back to focusing on conversations that are about the country's interest. And that is not what Donald Trump is. And so I am willing to accept that my party has less of a chance to be in the White House in order to make sure that someone as corrupt, as both morally and otherwise, someone as narcissistic and focused exclusively on himself, someone who has turned upside down our foreign policy and our broader approach to democracy, should not be able to reach anyone in this country. Because even if he loses, his rhetoric, his views still are in the blood system of this country, and we need to eliminate that. Someone once said to me, and I think this is a good choice, would you want Adolf Hitler on the ballot if that meant that you had a better chance of winning? No, because the chance that he would become the president is too great a risk, whatever it is. To your second point, this is something that we Democrats need to do a lot more meaningful analysis, because I don't think it's as simple as just saying the Trump supporters just don't know what they're doing. That's not fair. That's not respectful. And that I don't think that's helpful. I think the reality is that there are a lot of people in this country who have felt like, and this has increased over time, that the government does not work for them. Government works for either themselves or the elite, so to speak, and that they're not at the table for the conversations, that people don't care about them, People are not identifying or interested in what matters to them. And then there's also this feeling among many in our country where they're feeling like they are getting overtaken by external forces that they can't control. And what I think Donald Trump has done very successfully is he's tapped into that disengagement and that disillusionment. And he's provided people with something very different to see as part of our government, and a frankness and candor that many might find repulsive and inappropriate, but speaks to, I think, a general view that, you know, we ought to be able to speak our mind a little bit more, and that he represents someone who, as you point out, will stand up to the establishment, is not going to cave to special interests, or is not just interested in you know, those around him. Somehow he has, even though I think he is, but he has convinced people through his populism that he is there for him. And you know, I think there are examples of this throughout history, and one that is really worth focusing on is that there was previously an America First movement in the United States.
Sure was.
In the 1930s. And it has eerie similarities to what is going on right now. They actually were able to infiltrate Congress. And I think Rachel Maddow's podcast on this called Ultra really was fantastic. But this is a authoritarian playbook that he is running. And it can be, and historically has been very effective. And part of what we need to do is we need to reach out to many of these disillusioned folks and talk about policies, ideas, understand what their concerns are, and directly address them. And that's something that we have talked a lot about here in Congress.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe to our channel so you never miss a video. Also, for more content just like this, please consider joining our Warning Premium community. You can find out more in the description below.